Welcome to the Brandwise podcast, where we talk about the big branding moves that business owners are making and the why behind it. I'm your host, Jess Freeman, here to help you be wise and be bold. People are searching for what you offer right now. They're Googling, trying to find your service, and if you're not showing up, who is? I'm going to guess it's probably your competition or some wellness influencer who is charging more even though they don't have the credentials or the expertise. And I wanted to talk about SEO today because I know a lot of people are overwhelmed by it and a lot of people are ignoring it. But I love SEO because it's not about chasing clients, creating content that you hope someone sees as they're scrolling through their feed and then disappears a week later. It is about creating content that makes it easier for people to find you, and it has a longer shelf life. So I'm going to talk about some things that are changing in SEO, as well as some of the benefits of SEO outside of just you showing up in Google search. Like that's the given. One of the biggest benefits of SEO is that it makes your messaging a lot more clear. Because one of the basics of SEO is being really specific. You want to use your keywords and have a really clear idea of who you're trying to reach. I often say that having a niche makes SEO easier. Because if you're just trying to target nutrition coaching as a whole, or nutrition counseling, or personal training, or whatever it is as a whole, that is a big market to try and reach, especially if you are someone who works virtually with anyone, anywhere. That's a very, very broad market, and it's going to be difficult. And so if that's the only thing you've done so far and you're like, well, I tried SEO, it didn't work, that's probably part of why. You are trying to reach too broad of a market. A well-optimized site forces you to clarify what you do, who you help, and why you're different, and get really, really specific about who you work with and what specifically you do. A lot of times when I go to a health professional's website, it will say something vague at the top of the homepage about I help people feel healthier and live healthy lives or something. It's some mumbo jumbo like that. And that's not clear in so many ways. You could be a yoga instructor, you could be a dietitian, you could be a nurse practitioner. Like you could be a lot of things. So that heading is not going to be good for SEO. All of that clarification in your copy and your messaging and your niche is going to help your site as a whole, because it's not just good for SEO, it's good for people too. When people come to your site, they want to know who you are and how you help them. And as an added benefit onto that, like part B of all this clarification, is that also is going to help you stand out in your niche. And even if it's just standing out as a dietitian amongst all the other dietitians, or a personal trainer amongst all the other personal trainers in your niche, in your area, if you're someone who works locally, because you're not just competing with all the other professionals, you're competing with influencers and questionable advice online. And so we're going to help you stand out online by having this really clear messaging and good SEO. And so we want to make sure that people are finding your expertise, your insights, instead of all these like random other sources online. And part of that is creating content on your website, not just on Instagram. And I do want to talk about, social media versus SEO. I actually really love social media. I actually enjoy it. I know a lot of people feel frustrated by it. They get burnt out on social media. I'm not one of those people. And I think part of that is because my website brings in clients and leads. And yes, I do get leads from social media as well, but I don't have the pressure of every Instagram post or every reel having to perform. I get a lot of leads from Google. And so I don't have this added pressure of showing up on Instagram because I know this is not my number one source of clients. And when it comes to SEO versus social media, SEO is showing up when clients are searching for answers, whereas social media is hoping that they like scroll by at the perfect time. And I mean, yes, we are also hoping the most amount of people see your post that are on your website as well, but those posts can last for months and years and years. Whereas the Instagram post, maybe a week at the very most. And that's why SEO is more sustainable. As a healthcare professional, you need to take care of yourself, and that includes your own mental health as well. So if you're feeling burnt out by social media, yes, it's going to sound kind of ironic that I'm like, well, then instead focus on SEO because it's still something on your plate. But you can create that content knowing that the content you're creating for SEO purposes is actually going to have a much longer shelf life. I actually had someone inquire with me about a month ago, and she said, I was Googling a question about Wix, and you showed up in the Google AI summary of my question. So I clicked on it, read your post, and obviously then she inquired. That post is 5 years old. 5 years old. And yes, it is accurate. It is up to date. The opinion is accurate and like all of that because it's evergreen content. So it's not trendy or, anything like that. 5 years old. Can you imagine if someone saw an Instagram post of yours from 5 years ago? Like, one, I mean, were we using Instagram filters back then still? I don't think so, but that is unheard of that someone would look at or even see an Instagram post of yours from 5 years ago. Think about how long that would take to scroll back through your feed. So there's a much longer shelf life, so it is more sustainable marketing for your business and for your own well-being. And I know that there's been some talk about AI and SEO, and people, being like, well, it doesn't matter anymore. And so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about because SEO is not dying. Yes, it has changed. Yes, AI is changing things. There is ChatGPT search as well. Like, yes, it's going to continue to change as well, but it is not dying because I'm still getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of views on my website every month from SEO, and clients who are getting hundreds or thousands of views every month from SEO. So Google, yes, might be shifting, search might be shifting, but it is not dying. And so I already mentioned that I showed up in the Google AI summary. I also wanted to mention I had a client who messaged me just 2 or 3 weeks ago and said, we showed up in someone's ChatGPT search. Like someone, instead of going to Google, which I know a lot of people are doing this, instead of going to Google, they went to ChatGPT and said, show me, and whatever it was, like local service providers who do X, Y, and Z. And they showed up in the search results. Like ChatGPT was like, okay, here's like 5. I went and tested this myself because I wanted to see what it looked like. Did they just name them? Did they link to them? So I was like, oh, like, I want to do this search on ChatGPT and see what it gives me. Also to kind of test if it would give the same result or not. And so it did. Well, I mean, obviously I don't know if it was the exact same, but my client was number 1 listed right there. And part of that is because ChatGPT is looking at Google search results, basically. Maybe not literally looking, but that is part of how they're getting that information. Like the same way that Google is scraping the internet and finding websites and then ranking them, ChatGPT has a similar type of function. And so if your site is optimized, if your site is seen as a reputable source of information in your niche, it's going to likely be quoted or linked in Google AI summary, in ChatGPT, and all these other AI tools. And I know some people are like, AI is copying and taking people's information, and that's a whole other story. But for people who are using ChatGPT as search or these other AI tools, that you still have the possibility of showing up. But that's not going to happen by having a basic unoptimized website. It still has to be optimized in order for ChatGPT to consider you as a good website to link. We know that there's a lot of misinformation online. You pull up TikTok and there's some new trend about putting XYZ in your water and your bread and your whatever. Like, there is a lot of misinformation out there. We all know this, both in nutrition and fitness and any other wellness niche. And that's because misinformation really thrives in low quality content. And if your website ranks well, you are helping control the narrative. And so, yes, you might need to even blog about the trends that are happening. So the next time, somebody on TikTok is talking about adding cinnamon or paprika or whatever it is, then create a post about that and make it informative. And don't just make it about like, no, you don't need to add cinnamon to your water. You don't need to add paprika to your eggs, like whatever it is. I'm just making up something. You want it to be informative, not just addressing the trend, but like, why are people like, why are they putting cinnamon in their drinks or, whatever it is? Okay, so they're trying to help with this symptom. So, like, yes, address the trend, but then go deeper into like, okay, so I know you're doing this because you want to have better skin or fight your PCOS or like whatever it is, creating that content to then inform and help fight that misinformation. Like, then go into like, this is what actually helps. This is why this helps, and like really create an in-depth, credible piece of content, not just, hey, you don't need cinnamon, you need XYZ, and like a 300-word blog post is not going to show up at the top of search when people are searching about this trend. And I know they're searching about these trends on Google as well, because one, I have done it. I have Googled like, what is the TikTok trend of, cinnamon and what lemon and like whatever. And I know that people are Googling it because there are multiple articles out there from like BuzzFeed and sometimes, NBC, ABC, something like that, that are talking about the trend. And we want to position you up there as well. If you think about it, how are you going to tell Google that you're an expert in your niche if you have 3 blog posts? That's not really going to speak volumes about your expertise. This isn't to say that you're not going to rank until you have 300 blog posts. If you really want to work on SEO, you have to build up this library of content. You want to kind of see it as like, this is the resource, this is the place to go for this type of content. I mean, even think about, there are people that you probably follow on Instagram or TikTok that you're like, oh, Lauren is the, gluten-free person to go to. And maybe you like have her bookmarked and you just scroll through her reels to look at recipes or something like that. Well, she probably also has a website with even more gluten-free things. Like, there are probably people on Instagram or TikTok that you bookmark, that you reference a lot, and that you're like, oh, well, if you need to know about gluten-free foods, if you need to know about crypto, if you need to know about PCOS, this is the person to go to. You want your website to be that place also. Not, oh, my Instagram has all my stuff. I mean, yes, you can have a lot of content on Instagram too, but you want to be able to say, my website has even more information. Not, oh yeah, here's like my Instagram and you just have to scroll forever and hope you can find my posts that are, there's no filter or search like for individual profiles on Instagram. And then people go to your website and it's just like a landing page and maybe a sales page or something. You want to be able to send them to your website for even more information, or an easier way to kind of sort and filter through that information that is also on your Instagram. If you're not answering how to deal with back pain, or how to handle XYZ with PCOS, or how to deal with this. If you're not going to answer those questions, someone else is. And you hearing that might be like, okay, well, that's fine. Someone else can answer it. But that's not positioning you as the expert. That's letting your competitor be the one that's positioned as the expert and the go-to person. I'm not trying to pressure you in that you have to answer every single question out there, because that is impossible. But by doing keyword research and getting into SEO and starting to create that content, you can start with the most common questions. Or, what you really could do is go to your Instagram, look at the content you have posted over the last year or 2 years, have fun scrolling for the last, 2 years of content, and look at what you could copy and paste or repurpose quickly into a blog post. Now, you're not going to be able to take just one Instagram caption and turn that into a blog post and turn it, say, okay, good, great, I did it. You're going to need a lot more than that, but you might be able to compile things and kind of expedite the process of creating this content. So for some action items when it comes to SEO, first, I want to make sure that you have a website that is answering specific problems. So I just mentioned, thinking about the problems that people are dealing with, that they're Googling. I want you to use clear, focused language that clients are using, not industry jargon. If you need to, use ChatGPT or Claude and say, like, how can I say this in a down-to-earth way? How can I use layman's terms for this phrasing so it sounds more human? Like, help me almost dumb this down so it sounds more down to earth. Think about that. I want you to think about optimizing for local search, because there are people out there who they want to work with someone in their area, even if it is virtually. Like, for some people, it's weird for them to think about working with a dietitian who lives halfway across the country. They want to work with someone locally. And then, of course, making sure that your site is fast, that it does look good on mobile, and that it's up to date, because all of these things factor into your SEO. It's not just how many keywords you have on your site. Google has over 200 factors. There's a lot that goes into SEO. I hope this episode was helpful. I want you to remember that even though SEO might not always be a quick win, it is a long-term win with repeated gains. And we want to make sure that you have a kind of back-end marketing system that is bringing in those clients on autopilot. Like, as someone who has 200 some odd blog posts, now keep in mind, I have been blogging, podcasting, YouTubing for many, many, many years. Deleted a lot of content that was irrelevant. But as I keep creating content, obviously more and more goes on the site. I can point to specific blog posts that have brought in clients over and over and over. And I want that for you as well, because I don't know about you, but like, I love having a blog post that I wrote like 5-6 years ago that still brings in clients, and ideal clients at that. If you don't invest in SEO, you're leaving money on the table. So I want you to think about how you can shift some things in your business, in your weekly schedule, to start prioritizing SEO a little bit more. Are you a squiggle or a square? Go to justcreatives.com/quiz to find out where your brand ends up and find out what a square or squiggle even means. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to leave a review or share it on Instagram, and tune in next week for another episode.